Hello and welcome. Tonight, a gang armed with pistols and a radio-controlled bomb are on the loose. Watch closely. You may help to catch them before someone gets killed. As always, Crimewatch is live and it's for real. The detectives behind me right now are waiting for your call.
We need your help this month to catch a man who killed a lonely woman in her home in Bristol. And also to find 3 robbers who attacked a tiny country bank in Derbyshire. And if ever you've been burgled, maybe something here is yours. Here's our number until midnight, and you may want to write it down. It's 01 811 8055.
Well over 1,000 people rang into last month's Crimewatch, and as a direct result, over a dozen men have been arrested and charged. You may remember that armed robbery in Milton Keynes, where courageous building workers struggled with their attackers.
Get him! It's a raid! Let's get him! Bastard! Out!
Police are still following up leads from the programme, and though no one has yet been charged with that attack, 12 people have been arrested as a result of your calls and charged with a variety of crimes, including robbery, theft and burglary.
And several viewers recognised a man caught by security cameras as he was robbing building societies in London. Within 24 hours of the programme, a 30-year-old man from Holloway in North London was arrested. He has now been charged with 5 robberies and 1 attempted robbery.
Sometimes the best information that comes to Crimewatch comes from criminals themselves, very often appalled at the level of violence other criminals indulge in. That was the case with a robbery we featured back in January. It was a ferocious and an unprovoked attack on a family in their home in Epping.
Dean? What? Bloody hell.
I've got a knife! Get him down! Get him down! Get him down! I want him tied up!
208 viewers called in after seeing that, and as a direct result, 3 men from South East London appeared at Chelmsford Crown Court this week and were given jail terms ranging from 8 to 14 years. And a very recent development in a case we first featured in August. Our lookalike actor played the part of a building society robber who'd struck 11 times in the south of England. Well, last Saturday, the robber moved further north to Leicester. He tied up 6 people and robbed the Abbey National in Horsefair Street at about lunchtime. Now, police will be back outside the Abbey National in Leicester city centre this Saturday. If you were shopping there last Saturday lunchtime, even if you didn't see the robbery or anything suspicious, please do call in and talk to the officers. Sue.
Well, now to tonight's cases. For several months, police in London and Hertfordshire have been following a trail of attempted armed robberies. Early in the morning, several men, brandishing guns, burst into a company on Wages Day. They hold the staff hostage and then they try to ambush the security van when it arrives. We've reconstructed their most recent raid, where this time they did succeed and they got away with £90,000. But our film starts 4 months before that, with Crimewatch photographs based on police records of one of their earlier attempts. It happened in Hertfordshire, where the robbers gave notice of a sinister new weapon. Imperial Coal Stores was a depot for hops en route from Kent to breweries in the Midlands. It was due to close in 6 weeks' time, but in September there were still some 20 people employed there. Fred Jr., the gate man, arrived first and opened up the offices as usual. The other 5 people who worked with Fred in the office block would all be coming in during the next half hour or so. At 7:15 that morning, the only other person on the premises was Peter Bryant, a lorry driver who was still asleep in his cab. Friday was wages day.
Good morning, Fred.
Morning, Zaz. All right.
Yeah, okay. You got a visitor, Fred.
How will you know that?
Get down and keep him quiet! Right, you come with me. Come on, get up. Get it back, you little bastard. Go in there. Now you stay there, right there. Get down. Face the wall. Face it.
Where are your car keys?
In the ignition.
You tell the truth. If you're pissing your bar, I'll shoot you.
Stay there.
You will or something?
Got a heart condition.
Christ, oh, make yourself a cup of tea. Who's due to arrive next?
The store manager.
What's the front? I want to know the routine when the security van gets here.
Outside in the yard, Peter Bryant was quite unaware that anything was wrong.
Get in there.
Well, sit where you normally sit.
No.
What about barrier? Is it usually up or down?
Down. It just depends.
Well, don't touch it. Leave it up. And don't warn anybody.
Here. Try one. Don't forget, one of your mates died the other week. All right.
Go on, put your hands on the seat.
Come on, spread your legs. All right.
Do you know what this is? It's a remote control unit. And it works this. At the touch of a button, it goes off. What you're going to do is take your mate out some tea, get him out the cab, and if you let him know there's anything wrong, I'll press a button and blow your back out. Understand?
Till I pick something.
You know, when he been gambling, he back one winner in his life. You remember when...
You open this bloody door! I can't blow your bloody head off! I can't open it! Open the bloody door! Come on! Hurry up! Come on! The fucking money out the back. Throw it up! Get moving! Quick! Right. Go on! Get it! Get him! Right! Turn it off! Turn the bloody motor off! Ow! Get out, you bastard! Come here, you little bloody toe rag! Out of the car! Come here! Come on! Get it! Okay, that's the last one! Get in the car! Let's go! Come on! Get out of here! Come on!
Well, terrifying. Detective Sergeant Jeff Hunter's in charge of that investigation. Was the employee we saw there actually shot?
Well, fortunately he wasn't, no. As you've seen, the gun was placed against the side of his head and was discharged, and he was dead for several days after that incident.
And how is the gate man, Fred Julia?
Mr. Julia, unfortunately, hasn't recovered. He suffers from a serious heart complaint, and that was aggravated by this incident.
So it's obviously vital that these men are caught. Could we have descriptions of them?
Yes, there were 4 men, but we really only have good descriptions of 2 of them. The first was in his early 40s, about 5'9" to 5'10". He was slim build, wearing a short black wig, and he had dark features. The second man was again in his early 40s, slightly shorter, about 5'7" to 5'8", had short mousy coloured hair, brushed across to cover a receding patch at the front.
And the first man with the black wig in particular seemed quite an unstable sort of character.
Yes, he was.
Now, that device which was strapped onto the back of the security guard, could it in fact have killed him?
Well, we know that it was a viable device, and as far as we are aware, it could have caused substantial, if not fatal, injury to the man.
And quite unnecessary, really, to make the threat a viable one.
Completely unnecessary.
Now, you've brought the actual device in that they used. Where did that come from?
Well, we know that there is an outlet in the north of London, in the Enfield area. It's a wholesale outlet. We'd be interested to know of anybody that has recently acquired these transmitters or has come into possession of several of them in recent months.
That could be a vital clue. Now, you think that these same men have struck several times this year, unsuccessfully until now. So let's just recap on their previous attempts. Their first one was a bungled attack at Enfield Crematorium on the 25th of April. Then they tried again at the Cross and Herbert warehouse in Hoddesdon, Hertfordshire, and then on the 3rd of May, that was. Then their next attempt came on the 27th of June at Amtico in Ponders End. And finally it was on the 13th of September that they got away with the £90,000 at Tottenham. Now, how sure are you that all those attacks were linked?
Well, we are linking them because the methods are identical in each case. They're early morning attacks on premises which of themselves wouldn't be considered worthy of robbing. The descriptions of the men concerned are the same. The weapons used are the same.
And the premises are quite irrelevant, really?
Yes, the premises are irrelevant in that we feel that it was the security vehicle which at that time of the morning would be heavily loaded.
And do you believe, in fact, that these men are prepared to blow someone's back out, as they put it?
Well, there was an inordinate amount of violence used in this last attack. They've shown a willingness now to discharge firearms, and this device, completely unnecessary that it should be taken. It's a viable device which could have caused, as I've said, serious, if not fatal injury.
Well, Mr Hunt, thank you. There's a £9,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of those men. The number to call, if you can help, is 01811 8055. You can speak in confidence to a detective, or as always, you can ask for a BBC researcher. Or you can call the Central Robbery Squad direct on 01230 2061. That's 01230 2061.
Well, now, to cheer ourselves up a little bit, to our Aladdin's cave. Stolen treasures recovered by the police. This month they include ivories dredged up from a lake in Kent and a house full of antique furniture. If you know who owns them, please give us a call. Here to take us through them is John Bly from the Antiques Roadshow. John.
Well, thank you, Nick. I'm sorry you missed my recital, but somebody must be missing a grand piano. It's a Broadwood, and albeit a baby grand, it must be leaving quite a hole in someone's room. Sadly, for the first time, we've got some Bibles. I say sadly because these beautiful books are never of any great commercial value outside the family that owns them. Here we've got one which I think most charmingly records the history of the Maddock family, Elizabeth Caroline, born 1st of June 1862 at 7:45 on Sunday evening. Isn't that lovely? And we got that right the way through to 1967 with Herbert John Day. I hope that strikes a chord with somebody. You know, what never ceases to amaze me is the enormous amount of things that are imported from all over the world. Everywhere you look, we've got vases from India, vases from Turkey, carvings that Nick's just mentioned from Africa and India and Japan. And through the old port of Imari, this beautiful porcelain bowl, these lovely colours, which really gave the popularity of this, gave the name. It didn't come from there, it came through that port. This one has got a repair and is mended with a rivet. That in itself is a clue, because repairs with rivets have gone out of fashion for some time now. Much more recently, through the same port of Imari, came this Satsuma vase. And also we've got a huge heap of gold coins, including this, which obviously I think is the biggest bracelet I've ever seen. I think there must be at least £2,000 of the gold there. I don't really want to put it down, but I suppose I must. We've got much more furniture than usual. One outstanding piece is this Chippendale style, but not period, buffet or sideboard, which has all the marks of a good 18th century piece, a bit of Chinese blind fret, a C scroll here, an S scroll, but put together in a Victorian way. Do you know, a few years ago, such a piece would probably make only a few pounds. Now, in the region of 1,000. We've also got a fine, admirable Fitzroy barometer, a very collectible thing, and also collectible, of course, today are toys. And here you've got a fort. Now, the fort is homemade and obviously of some sentimental value, but the lead soldiers themselves today are very collectible and worth quite a lot of money. But my favourite item this time is this pair of what first of all looks like cast iron figures. They are not, in fact, they are bronze, they're Regency, and they were originally little candelabra. They had an umbrella of wires. From each wire hung a crystal drop and a candle sconce in the top. Do you know, if these were restored, they'd be worth between £450 and £600. They're a lovely item. I do hope that you recognise something here. If you do, please give us a ring.
Indeed. If there is anything you think you do recognise, here is the number to ring, 01811 8055. Curiously, Crimewatch isn't so much about crime as about its victims. It's these victims that have aroused your sympathy and your concern, and our next reconstruction is all about one victim who lived alone in St Paul's in Bristol. Mrs Violet Milsom was 62. She was a grandmother, and 6 weeks ago someone murdered her. When police arrived at her flat, they, and the medical crews as well, were shocked and distressed by the injuries that had been inflicted on her. They began a search for clues. They now want to enlist your help. Our reconstruction begins nearly a month before her death in Bristol. It shows none of the violence, only the events that led up to it.
Phil, I would like to talk more about that, but we'll pause some music first. The Radio Orchestra, appropriately, the Song of Summer.
Violet Milsom lived alone in a dingy basement flat. Her grandchildren were welcome visitors, but they couldn't get to see her often, and she was a lonely soul, with Ginger her only company. She was rather scared as well. Each night she lodged a little message in her window to ward off strangers. At 6 p.m, as St Paul's began to come alive, Violet's day was almost over. Tuesday, September the 3rd, at about 10 o'clock. She disturbed 3 young men who'd smashed a pane of glass in her door. Thursday, the 26th of September, 3 weeks on, and 5 days before she died, Violet went shopping for a chest of drawers.
Can I have it?
How much is that one?
I think, yeah, it's a tenner, that one.
The owner remembers Violet because she couldn't spare a tenner from her weekly pension, and she agreed to give him a deposit.
If you can't leave a favour deposit, then we'll get your receipt and then we'll come pick up when you want. Right, I'll get your receipt.
Next day, Friday the 27th, the owner saw Violet once again. She seemed to know this man. If it was you, or if you know who he is, please call us. Monday, September the 30th. It's pension day, and having collected her allowance, Violet went to do the weekly shopping. It wasn't hard to spend about £5 of the 36 on Rice Krispies, tin soup and cat food. That afternoon, a helpful neighbour was doing some gardening for Violet.
It does look nice, John. When do you think you'll be able to come and finish it then?
I don't think it'll be tonight.
Oh, well, you come tonight. I never open my door after 6 o'clock, you know.
Well, it'll probably be sometime tomorrow.
After her neighbour left, Violet went to fetch the evening paper. As far as we know, it's the last time she left her home alive. What happened next was seen in detail by a witness sitting right across the street. Old Sam, an ageing tramp, was in his usual doorway outside the Shady Grove Cafe. And another witness, David Crowley, remembers walking past the flat that night because at about 8 o'clock, 3 youths came out of a garden and pushed past him. And another witness, on her way home at midnight, remembers a man appearing from a gateway near Violet's flat. Old Sam saw all of this as well. He must have done. Yet, ironically, though he can see, he doesn't understand. He lives in a world of his own. Next morning, Violet's neighbour came back to do the gardening as he'd promised. When he'd finished, he went down to the flat to borrow a broom. He discovered Violet's body. She'd been strangled, sexually assaulted, and horribly mutilated. Detective Superintendent Malcolm Hughes is the man seeking the killers, and you've been in charge of murder investigations before, but this, I think, is the worst, or certainly one of the worst you've ever come across.
Yes, I've dealt with a number of murders, and without a doubt, this is one of the worst, yes.
You brought a clue. What's this?
This is a belt, I believe, from a summer dress. When we found Mrs. Milsom's body, this was tied around her wrist, and without doubt has been used by the killer to tie her up.
Not necessarily hers, you think, then? It's what? It's nylon?
Yes, it's a nylon material. It looks as though it's from a summer dress. Despite all our inquiries, we cannot be sure this belonged to Mrs. Milsom and could well have been taken there by her killer.
Right. Now, there were several witnesses, as we saw, and people that you badly need to trace. Let's start, if we can, with the 3 youths who were seen, they sort of bumped into. Well, actually, there was the man, of course, first at the trading post, wasn't there, with the long hair. What do we know about him?
Yes. We know that he was with Mrs. Milsom. They appeared to be quite friendly and obviously knew each other. Now, despite all our inquiries, we haven't found him yet, and I would like to speak to him, obviously.
Right. Then there was the witness, David Crowley, walking past. 3 youths bumped into him coming out of a garden.
Yes, that was about 8 o'clock on Monday the 30th. I'm not saying they're the murderers, but they were certainly in the area at a very important time, and I would like to talk to them.
And, of course, the man coming out of the gate, I think, very close to her house at about midnight.
Yes, he's an interesting man. He was coming out of a gate next door to hers. Despite all our inquiries, nobody knows him in that house. Nobody knows him in Mrs. Milsom's house. And it's very important I find him and talk to him.
We'll come back to just how important in a moment, but you've got a card there. Can we just have a look at that and why?
Yes, indeed. When we looked at Mrs. Milsom's belongings at her flat, and amongst some documentation, we found this card. It's a Christmas card. On the front it says, "For my sweetheart at Christmas." Inside, it says, "To Violet from Steve." Now, despite speaking to all her relatives and friends, we have not been able to find Steve, and I would again like to speak to him.
You want to speak, in fact, to anybody who knew Violet Milsom?
Yes, I do.
Now, you're really worried about this murder for a particular reason. Can you explain what it is?
Mrs. Milsom was brutally and sadistically killed. I believe that the man who killed her is mentally disturbed and dangerous. I also believe if he's not caught, he may kill again. I also believe that somebody knows who he is, or may suspect they know who he is. And if there's anybody who knows who killed Mrs. Milsom, or who suspects somebody of killing her, then please come forward and speak to me, because they may prevent another terrible crime.
You really think it's a likelihood that this man will kill again?
I think it's a possibility that he will kill again, yes.
Well, if you think you can help, please do ring us here in the studio. Here's the number, 01 811 8055. Remember, you can speak in absolute confidence. Or you can ring Bristol Police at Trinity Road Police Station, Bristol 267 985. That's 0272 267 985. So.
Well, now the Crimewatch Incident Desk. You may not know it yet, but Crimewatch UK is spawning regional programmes, and tonight, making a guest appearance from Crimewatch South, is Constable Mercedes Birch from Dorset. Helen Phelps will be back from holiday next month, and here, as ever, is Superintendent David Hatcher.
Our first case on Incident Desk is an armed robbery. It happened on Halloween at a place appropriately called Spook Hill in Dorking, Surrey. Early that morning, this white Ford van parked a few yards down the hill from a branch of Pritchard's Security Services. As guards were preparing to deliver £23,000 in hospital wages, they were attacked by 2 gunmen. They grabbed the money and made off in that white van, which we know was stolen 2 weeks before. A passing motorist gave chase until the van was abandoned in Harrow Close, and the men raced off through a covered alleyway to Hampstead Road and got into a grey articulated lorry cab like this. It's still not been traced, and we'd like to know where it went to after Dorking. All 3 robbers were white. The first is described as being between 30 and 40, approximately 5'10", stocky, with short brown hair. The second was also stocky, in his late 20s, about 5'9". The third, the driver, was in his early 30s, slim with long hair which was swept back. That stolen van was B594 AMG. If you know where it was kept between mid-October and Halloween, or if you saw the robbery or recognise the men, give us a ring.
Next, an urgent appeal from police in Greater Manchester. Last Saturday evening, a hooded man attacked a 14-year-old girl as she walked home along Pemberton Road in Wigan. He dragged her into Blundell's Wood, where he raped her and tried to strangle her. She was beaten, gagged and tied to a tree. It's vital we trace the drivers of 2 cars, a blue Cortina and a white Cortina or Audi, with a V or Y suffix, seen in Pemberton Road around 6 o'clock. And her attacker left a clue, part of a brown-striped tea towel, like this, which he used as a gag. As you can see, the corner has been cut off and the edge turned under and hemmed. We need to find where it came from. The girl had been carrying a yellow bag, like this one, with magazines in it. They're still missing and may have been dumped somewhere. If you've any idea at all who the man is, please call us before he strikes again.
The Bowes Road branch of Barclays Bank in London had a couple of unpleasant callers on Thursday the 19th of September, but their visit didn't pass unrecorded. As the 2 armed men threatened the cashier, a customer walked in on the robbery. At gunpoint, she was forced to lie down on the floor. After checking the street, the men stuffed the money, nearly £7,000, into a bag and made for the door. The first man was a bit overdressed for September, but we do know he's in his mid-30s and about 5'10" tall. His partner's less camera shy. He's about 35 years old, 5'9" tall, with greying hair. Both have London accents. If you recognise either of them, do ring us.
If you live or work in South Yorkshire or the East Midlands, you might recognise this man. He's wanted for questioning by police in connection with a series of bank frauds. Here's a closer look at him, snapped in the act by an alert cashier with an Instamatic camera. So far, he's got away with more than £2,000 using a variety of false names. If you know him, or if he talks to you about starting an account, please give us a call.
And finally on Incident Desk, another picture, an artist's impression of a rapist. He's struck twice so far in Hampshire, most recently on Sunday the 13th of October, when he attacked a woman in Aldershot. She remembers he was wearing trainers, faded jeans and a brown or burgundy sweater with white flecks. He's in his 20s, about 5'11" tall, stockily built, and he was driving a dark 4-door estate. That L plate might mean he's teaching someone to drive. If you think you know him or have information on any of our other cases, please ring us.
Indeed, the number to call, 01 811 8055. That's 01 811 8055.
Well, our last reconstruction tonight takes us into the countryside, to Derbyshire at the edge of the Peak District. It's a part of the world more used to poaching than violent crime, so an armed bank robbery has been a shock to the whole community. A security guard has still not recovered from the attack. It happened 2 months ago in the village of Cromford, near Matlock, and police are afraid that the gang might strike again. Cromford is busy with tourists during the summer months, but by September the 18th, most of them had gone, returning the village to its usual tranquility. Never in its 100-year history had there been a robbery at the tiny bank in the main street. 15 miles away in Ilkeston that day, a group of men were planning an unwelcome visit to Cromford. They drove into New Oakwell Garage to hire a car. They were leaving it rather late. They were due in Cromford in 2 hours' time. One of the men presented a licence which police now know had been stolen from Nottingham last year.
Sign it for me just there, please.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just check. I'm sorry, sir, your signature doesn't agree with the one on the driving licence. I won't be able to hire to you.
Well, it's probably just because the licence is in a bit of a mess.
I'm ever so sorry, but there's nothing I can do about it.
I see. OK, well...
Sorry.
That's all right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The white N-registered Mini was spattered with mud, and it was specially distinctive because it still had its original hubcaps, which is unusual for a Mini 11 years old. Three-quarters of an hour later, at Hooley's garage near the centre of Nottingham, their next attempt to hire a car succeeded. A man using the same stolen licence hired this beige Ford Escort, registration number B227KRR. The main street in Cromford, Market Place, was where the Escort was seen next at around 2:45 that afternoon. By this time, there were 3 men in the car. It parked 200 yards away from Lloyd's Bank.
Can I help you?
Yeah, have you got any more of these? I'd like to open a bank account.
Yeah, certainly. There you go. Would you like to open an account now?
No, but I will be needing to. I've just moved into the area.
I see. Well, if you drop your name and particulars down on that form you've got there, bring it back any time.
Great, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Cheers. Well, let's go. Might as well go.
Hello there.
Hi, I've got a few minutes now, actually. Could I open a bank account?
OK, fine. Did you bring the form with you?
Left them in the car. Sorry about that.
It's no problem. There we go. If you'd like to read that and start filling that in, and I'll need your regular signature on there. OK?
I'll wait for you outside.
Thank you so much for your help. It's been very nice.
As 3 o'clock closing time approached, the bank manager and a customer left the bank.
I'm off.
It was time for the security guard to start locking up.
Right, stand back, it's a raid.
Where are the keys? Give me the keys.
OK. Hang on, let me move it. Come on.
Come on, get in here. Get a bloody move on. OK, now you've got to give me some time.
Right.
I didn't mean to hurt him.
Let me get the first aid box.
Where is it?
It's up there.
Go on. Here's the car. Don't do anything for 5 minutes. If you do anything, I'll come back and kill you.
Well, the man in charge of the investigation is Detective Chief Inspector Jeff Short. It's rather unusual, actually, isn't it, for a tiny bank like this to be robbed, because the risk is so high for such a small return.
It is. If a team are going to go out armed with sawn-off shotguns and use violence, we would expect them to go to some of the larger branches for where there are more pickings.
In this case, they got £7,500.
Yes, that's all.
How badly hurt was the security guard we saw there?
He got a very nasty cut over his eye, needing about 9 stitches. Now, that's healed up now, but it's left a very nasty scar. And, in fact, he's left his job at the bank.
So they might do it again, and in order that our viewers might help to complete the picture of what happened that day, I think it is worth looking at where the gang went after the robbery had happened. The beige Escort travelled along the back road to Lee and Holloway, which passes Arkwright's Mills. It took them over the humpbacked bridge which crosses the River Derwent. We know they went under Cromford Railway Bridge because that's where the truncheon they'd taken from the bank was found. At around 3 o'clock, a Saab driver near High Peak Junction remembers a speeding escort overtaking him on a blind bend. The car then travelled through the villages of Holloway and Cryche, crossing the A610 at Bullbridge. From there it went south to Belper, where it was found abandoned in the marketplace. So once they'd abandoned that car, do you know where they went from Belper?
No, we don't. We've no witnesses at all that can actually tell us what happened to them. We would imagine that if they jumped out of a car, this escort car on the marketplace, and then jumped perhaps into another vehicle, that they would have been noticed. And we were looking for witnesses who saw them leave that car and get into another one, or, in fact, where did they go to?
But what we do know about is their movements early on that day of the robbery. The gang made at least 3 failed attempts to hire a car. The first one was at 12:05 at Sandcliffe Garage in Stapleford. Then at 12:15 they tried at another branch of Sandcliffe Garages in nearby Ilkeston. And at 12:30 they were once again turned away, as we know, at New Oakwell Garage, also in Ilkeston. And then finally at 1:15 they succeeded at Hooley's Garage in Nottingham. An hour and a half later, that car turned up near the bank in Cromford. They made so many attempts, and with a very obviously stolen licence, they were in fact rather amateurish, it would seem.
They were. They appear to be very amateurish, but unfortunately they did in fact get away with the money.
What about that white N-registered Mini, which seemed very distinctive? It was mud-spattered, and it had original hubcaps.
Yes, it was N-registered. We think that this car does in fact belong to one of the offenders. They kept it out of sight as best they could near the hire car firm, and we're fairly convinced that it does belong to one of the offenders, and we would like assistance from the public to locate that car, hopefully tie it into a team who are good enough to have done this job.
You think the fact that it had an original hubcap is distinctive, so perhaps we can have a look at that?
Yes, this hubcap on a 10-year-old car, there are very few of the cars that we have actually checked in the area have still got the original hubcaps, and we've checked something in the region of 200 in the Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire area.
Well, Mr Short, thank you very much indeed. There is a £5,000 reward too for leading to the conviction of the robbers. The number to ring here, if you can help, is 01811 8055, or ring the Derbyshire Police direct on Ripley 0773 44883. That's 0773 44883. That and all the other numbers from tonight are on CFAX. And if you don't have an access to a phone, please do write to us. It's Crimewatch UK, BBC Television Centre, London W12 8QT.
We'll be back with any developments on Crimewatch Update at 11:35, which is, what, an hour and a half's time. If you can't stay up till then, our next programme is on December the 12th. Please remember, police have asked us to show you isolated cases of violence to help catch the perpetrators. But violent crime is rarer than people think. Indeed, the latest British crime survey just published shows that those who fear crime most, and in particular the elderly, are even safer than the rest of us. So please, whatever we've shown you, don't have nightmares. Do sleep well.
Good night.
Good night.